I'm here at Joongboo Market. This is my favorite Korean grocery store in Chicago, Joongboo Market. And we're gonna go in and I'm gonna show you how to stock your Korean vegan pantry. This is Mr. An. He's the very friendly manager here. If you have any questions about what is karetak, how do I find Korean potatoes, or how do I find the best gochujang, this is the man you want to talk to, Mr. An, okay? Thank you so much. 감사합니다. Okay, so we're right at the very entrance. It's like totally open, but there's so many amazing things here that I wanted to talk about. Number one is the soy milk, guys. So soy milk, you guys will see, is used a lot in my cookbook, and Korean soy milk is very different from what you'll find at the American grocery store, so do check it out. It's nuttier, it's thicker, it's delicious, it's like drinking a milkshake. You're also seeing a ton of rice. As I'm sure many of you know, rice is a staple of the Korean pantry, whether you're vegan or not. You're gonna see a ton of that. And then I want you to look up all the way over there. Look at that. That's all ramen, ramyeon, which is Korean instant ramyeon noodles. And see that green one, light green one on the left over there? That's vegan, okay? So we've got a lot of ramyeon, a lot of rice, and soy milk. Okay, let's go in. So these are Korean sweet potatoes. I use sweet potatoes a lot in my cookbook. There's a great story about my mom and sweet potatoes, and when I think about that story, I think these are the sweet potatoes she was talking about. They're Korean sweet potatoes, and as you can see, they're purple on the outside, but when you actually bake them and cook them, they're gorgeously yellow on the inside. They have a lot less moisture than the typical garnet yam or the sweet potato you're gonna find at your local grocery store, and they're sweet, and they're dense, and they're nutty, and they are so, so delicious. So definitely try and cook with a Korean sweet potato in favor of the Western sweet potato once in a while. I think you're really gonna like it. One of the most popular dishes in my blog is tteokbokki, okay? And people are always confused about the rice cakes. There's so many different kinds of rice cakes when you walk into the Korean grocery store. Now, typically, you should get it fresh if you can, which is what we're gonna do later. But if you can't buy it fresh, there is a whole section of frozen karetak, which is rice cakes. Now, there are two kinds of karetak typically. There's the kinds that are like in these oblong discs. This is for tteokguk. So for my tteokguk recipe, this is what you want to use, right? But for tteokbokki, which is the very, very popular spicy Korean rice cakes, what you want are these tubes, okay? These tubes are what you're gonna look for. So again, my best recommendation is to try and get it fresh. But if you can't find fresh karetak, I'm telling you, there's a whole section here in the frozen food aisle of frozen karetak that'll work just as fine, all right? So this is all the different gochugaru. Gochugaru is hot pepper powder, or Korean chili powder. Comes in different like fineness, so it can be very fine or it could be sort of coarse, just like salt. This is a really good brand of gochugaru, so we're gonna add this to our pantry. Okay, this is like my favorite aisle of the Korean grocery store. It has all the different amazing sauces. In particular, we have an entire area of different soy sauces. Now, in the cookbook, you're gonna see I use two different kinds of soy sauces for all my cooking, all right? The first one is my absolute favorite kind of soy sauce. This is Gochujang, or soup soy sauce. So it's lighter in color, but it's actually more intense in flavor. So you wanna be very careful about how much of this soup soy sauce, or sometimes I call it light colored soy sauce, that you use. This is my favorite brand. We're gonna add this to our grocery cart. Now, when you're looking for soy sauces, you're gonna wanna go for things that have less ingredients. You don't want all the filler stuff. So another good one that I really like is this one, because it has not a lot of ingredients. It's just water, soybean, wheat, salt, and spirits. Now, the wheat is used to ferment the soybeans to create this beautiful flavor, okay? So for those of you who are gluten-free, there are gluten-free soy sauces available, and we'll talk about that as well. Gluten-free soy sauce. This is a gluten-free soy sauce. It has no wheat in it. So if you are looking for a Korean gluten-free soy sauce, this is a great one. I use this a ton when I'm cooking for my gluten-free friends. All right, guys, so I use a lot of sweetener in my savory cooking. I tend to use maple syrup because it's easily accessible. You can find it at any Western grocery store. But if you do happen to be in an Asian grocery store, there are so many different kinds of sweeteners here. They're called yut, which is like a syrup, right? You've got mulya, you've got yoritang, which is a different kind of syrup. There's so many different kinds of syrup. I really like to use brown rice syrup if I can find it. So this is a great option for you if you don't want to use maple syrup, but maple syrup is going to be great as well. Okay, so as you can see, there are a ton of different kinds of sesame oil. A lot of them are flavored sesame oil. In Korea, the sesame oils are toasted, okay? So they're not cold pressed, they're toasted. There are a lot of different kinds. You can sort of try, different kinds and find the one that you like. Let's see here. This one, like Ashi, is a very good brand. And I don't use a lot of sesame oil in my cooking. You don't want to cook with sesame oil because there's a low burn point, but it's great for adding flavor to your dishes. So here is another great aisle for adding flavor to your dishes. I'm just going to take this off. So dried seaweed, or dashima, is very important because it gives you the flavor of the sea without having to add fish or other kind of fish products. So what I tend to look for are sort of these very large sheets of dashima, like this. This is going to be what you're looking for, large sheets of dashima. Do not be confused and get something like, these sort of weeds. This is for soup, dried seaweed, okay? This is for, dried seaweed soup. Make sure you are going for dried kelp, these large sheets of dried kelp for dashima, okay? The other big flavor enhancer that we have here are, of course, mushrooms. I use a ton of dried shiitake mushrooms in my recipes. And you know what I look for? I look for these beautiful stripes. They're almost like tigers, right? This is when you know you got a good batch of mushrooms. So definitely pick some of these up the next time you're in a Korean grocery store. Come to Joongboo Market. They have a large selection. So I'm going to grab some dried kelp for myself as well. Okay. So, Tinjang. Tinjang is fermented soybean paste. It's huge in Korean cooking. You're gonna find it in so many different banchans, stews, noodles. It's in a lot of my dishes in the cookbook. This happens to be my favorite brand of Tinjang over here, Cheonjeongwon, or O Food in English. They have so many different kinds. Just make sure you look at the label because some of them do include anchovies and other fish products in their fermentation. This one does not. This one's a great brand here. I love this brand. But you can see they have them in like huge tubs because Korean people use this in their cooking so much. Okay, and right next to Tinjang, of course, is Gochujang. Gochujang is one of the most popular Korean condiments right now. They use it for bibimbap. You're gonna see it at the Korean barbecue. Gochujang is spicy, so it's kind of the paste to gochugaru, which we picked up earlier, right? There are a lot of different kinds of gochujangs, and once again, my favorite brand is the same brand that we saw making the Tinjang, which is Cheonjeongwon, or O Food. Here we go. Now, the cool thing about gochujang is that you can find gluten-free versions, particularly from this brand called O Food. They make their gochujang out of wheat flour or brown rice flour. This one happens to be the brown rice variety. I like this variety. It's sweet, it's delicious, and it's gluten-free for our gluten-free friends. One of my favorite ingredients is jajang. The cover of the book is my favorite dish in all the world, called jajangmyeon, and it's made out of fermented black soybeans. So if you try to make jajangmyeon using your plain old black beans that you get from the store, not gonna work out. You need to get jajang sauce, okay? So it's gonna be oftentimes next to gochujang and tinjang because it is a fermented soybean sauce. This is what it looks like. This is my favorite brand. All right, so in Korean culture, we're not heavy on desserts or sweets, okay? How many times have you heard your Asian parents say, oh, it's too sweet? However, many of our desserts contain pat, or sweet red beans, or sweet red bean paste. You can find it in the canned aisle, canned goods aisle. This is my favorite brand here that I like to use for a lot of my desserts. I like this brand a lot because it's not too wet, and it's kind of nice and thick, and it doesn't disrupt the baking process. I use a lot of pat in my baking. So we're gonna add a can of these. All right, and now we're off to get the fresh karetok. Remember, I told you you can get it frozen, but best if you get it fresh, and I saw the local bakery bringing it here, so we're gonna pick some of that up. All right, guys, so this is the miniature bakery inside of Joongboo Market. It's so important that you look for this aisle and you try and come a little bit early in the morning, because usually by the end of the day, all the good stuff is gone, okay? So as you can see, they have just beautiful Korean rice cakes here. This is usually like baked right here locally, and so it's all gluten-free. All the stuff here you're seeing is gluten-free. It's made primarily out of rice, fruit, a little sugar, and some beans. It's so delicious. But what I'm here to do is to get my favorite. This is kare떡. This is for tteokbokki, you know, my most popular recipe, tteokbokki. And when it's fresh, I'm telling you, your tteokbokki is going to be 10 times better than when you get frozen. So again, try and come here a little bit, you know, not early in the morning. If it's too early, it's not going to be here yet. But like, you know, mid-morning, so that you can get yourself some fresh kare떡 for your tteokbokki, okay? So, all right. So we are going to go into my favorite section of Joongboo Market. It's the hidden area that most people don't know about, and you're going to love it. So this is the Korean home goods section of the Korean market. You're gonna find all the Korean pots and the pans and the cookware, all the little tukbaegis and torsots that you guys are always asking me, where did you get your tukbaegi? You can get it here in the home food section or the cookware section of Joongboo Market. You're gonna love it. Let's take a look really quickly before we conclude our visit to my favorite grocery store. Look at all the rice cookers, from like beginner rice cookers, you know, for those of you who live alone and only need a little bit of rice, to like rice cookers that talk to you and have all sorts of gizmos and gadgets attached to it. You're gonna find every single rice cooker you want in your imagination here in the cookware section. And they have the obligatory Korean ajumma gloves for washing dishes and cleaning your kitchen. Lots of little tongs if you need a broom. And of course, these are the huge kimchi bowls. You're gonna see one of these when we go to my mom's house to make kimchi together. This is what they need to make kimchi for an entire season for their entire family, sometimes for all of your neighbors as well. That's where you see all of these big kimchi bowls. You're gonna see lots of big bowls for fermenting lots of different cabbages, lots of different radishes, all the different vegetables. So these are the bowls. These are the jars that you see in Korea when they are fermenting the soybeans for Tinjang. Sometimes I've even seen people use this for Jajang or for kimchi. They're kind of, sometimes they're buried like deep in the cellars, or sometimes they're just hanging out in very dry conditions. But this is what we use for fermenting things. I don't actually have one of these in my house yet because I don't know what I would do with it, but they're really beautiful. Here we're starting to see all the different pots. These are tukbaegis, so you're gonna see a reference to tukbaegi like 50 times in my cookbook. All of my jigaes, even I have a tukbaegi bread. So these are earthenware pots that you're going to see here in the Korean market. They have all different sizes, including these like individual size, so you can make your, you know, just for one sundubu jjigae. I think these are so adorable. Okay. And then, let's see, here on the bottom, you're gonna see the torsot, okay? People are always talking about torsot this, torsot pot. Torsot is stoneware, okay? So this is actually carved out of stone, and you're gonna often see torsot bibimbap, which is a very popular Korean dish. It's gonna come in this pot. It's typically used to make the best rice that you'll ever make, all right? This is my kitchen, the Korean vegan kitchen, and I know what you're saying. You don't have a Korean grocery store near you, or you don't really have an Asian grocery store near you. It's like 45 minutes away, or you have to have it delivered to your house. I totally get you. So what I wanted to do is to do a very brief segment showing you all of the ingredients I was able to get at my local American or non-Asian grocery store, and you'll be surprised at how much I was able to collect. All right, so let's start with soy sauce. Now, I've got the 3 soy sauces I picked up from Joongboo Market, which is the regular soy sauce, gluten-free soy sauce, and the Gochujang, or the soup light soy sauce. Light in color, not in flavor. okay? So for these 3 soy sauces, I was able to find this soy sauce, which is actually tamari. People don't realize that tamari is a soy sauce, even if it goes by a slightly different name. This one is also gluten-free. Tamari sauces are typically gluten-free, but be aware, I have seen tamari sauces that also contain wheat in them, so make sure to double check your labels. All right, so you were set on soy sauce. Next is sesame oil. All right, so this was just a generic brand of sesame oil I was able to find at my grocery store here. It's toasted. It says toasted on the label, just like a Korean sesame oil, so that's what you want to look for. Again, I bought both the soy sauce and the sesame oil in the international food aisle of my American grocery store. The other thing that I like to use in my cooking, as we talked about at Joongboo Market, is brown rice syrup. This is my sweetener of choice. However, if you don't have brown rice syrup, you can't find it, you can always just use regular maple syrup, okay? The other thing that we picked up at Joongboo is, of course, the Jajang sauce. This is the fermented black soybean sauce for Jajang myeon, which is my favorite noodle dish in all the world. I was actually amazed to find in my American grocery store a fermented black bean sauce, which actually tastes very, very close to what I would typically get from the Korean grocery store. And the best thing about it is this is gluten-free. So for all my gluten-free friends, this is a fantastic thing that you can actually only pick up at your American grocery store. And let's moving on. We've got gochujang. Gochujang is such a popular condiment now. You see it all the time in Food Network, on Top Chef. Everybody kind of knows what gochujang is, so I was not surprised. There are multiple different brands of gochujang at my local American grocery store. You should be able to find a tub yourself. In fact, you might even be able to find a tub of this brand in a local American grocery store. I remember I was in the middle of like Michigan, like a rural area of Michigan. I went to their kind of convenience store. It wasn't even a full-blown grocery store. I was amazed to find that they had Tinjang gochujang in their international aisle. Gochugaru can be a little bit tougher. A lot of times people mistake gochugaru and gochujang. Now remember, gochujang is a paste. Gochugaru is a powder, okay? So this does not have any sweetener or anything added to it. It's just the powder, right? It may be a little bit more difficult, but I was able to find gochugaru in my local American grocery store. If you can't find this in your local American grocery store, then I would suggest trying to order it online and having it delivered, okay? Next is Tinjang. Tinjang is fermented soybean paste. There's a lot of fermented soybeans happening in these ingredients. This is not to be confused with gochujang or even with jajang, which is fermented black soybean paste. This is not fermented black soybeans, okay? So Tinjang is a lot like miso. It's not the same thing because the fermentation process is pretty different. However, you are going to get a similar taste and texture. I wasn't able to find Tinjang in my local American grocery store, but they have a number of varieties of miso paste in different colors. And I think if you can't find Tinjang, then go with a good, strong miso. However, it's really not going to be the same thing. If you have to go to the Asian grocery store and you have a limited amount of time, make sure to include Tinjang in your list of things, knowing that you probably won't be able to find a good substitute at your American grocery store. A couple other things that I wanted to talk about. I showed you guys my favorite soy milk from the Korean grocery store. It tastes different. You're gonna take a sip of this and be like, oh my God, where has soy milk been all my life, all right? But of course, if you don't have time to go to your Asian grocery store, Korean grocery store, a regular old soy milk will do. Just make sure it's unsweetened. I like to get a very plain, unsweetened soy milk for baking purposes because I'm in control of the amount of sweetener that goes in. But otherwise, like I said, you can just get any of your favorite brand of soy milk. Now, a couple other things that I wanted to tackle here. Dried mushrooms. We talked about the beautiful tiger stripe dried mushrooms that you can get pretty much only at an Asian grocery store. I've never seen this at a Western grocery store. Now, don't worry, you can find dried shiitake mushrooms at a Western grocery store, but they're not gonna look like this. They're not gonna be big like this. They're not gonna be plump like this. I'm just letting you know, okay? Finally, we also have some kelp. We talked about the importance of tashima. This is going to add enormous depth to your stock, to your broths, to all of the jigaes or the stews that are in my cookbook. This is a very important ingredient to have. Luckily, I was able to find, again, a version in my Western grocery store in the international aisle. Okay. Now that we've kind of covered what I was able to procure from my plain Jane Western grocery store right here in Chicago, Illinois, I wanted to talk about those things that I really wasn't able to find, and quite frankly, I don't think you're going to be able to find, at least not in the next 5 years or so, okay? Amazingly, we're really only talking about a few items, all right? Now, first is the karetak, okay? This is the ingredient that I get questioned about the most and that often gets mistaken the most, okay? You're not gonna find this in your Western grocery store. And if you want a fresh variety, you're gonna have to hightail it over to your Asian grocery store to get the fresh version. However, if you're okay with the frozen version, you can find these online and have them delivered to you. One more thing you're not gonna be able to find in a Western grocery store is pat. This is sweet red bean paste. I have never seen this at a Western grocery store, so it's unlikely that you will find it. You will probably have to go to your Asian grocery store to find this. And again, if you don't have time or you're unable to go to your Asian grocery store, this is also something that is available online. One last item that is in the Korean vegan pantry at all times is a liquid egg replacer. Here in the United States, I'm using Just Egg. There are different brands of liquid egg replacers that are available throughout the world. This just happens to be the brand that I particularly enjoy and cook with immensely. Why am I including this in my pantry? The Korean Vegan Cookbook is chock full of recipes that use Just Egg or a liquid egg replacer. Now, in many cases, when liquid egg replacer isn't available, I have replaced it with sort of a workaround, but there are so many recipes that utilize this. I highly recommend that you try this product out or a liquid egg replacer that you can use in your own fridge. You wouldn't keep this in the pantry, by the way. This is something that you put in your fridge. Same thing with the soy milk, all right? That is it. This is the conclusion of how to stock your own Korean vegan pantry. I really hope that this helps you enjoy the Korean Vegan Cookbook all the more. I have every confidence that you're gonna take what you see here and turn it into something beautiful, healthy, nutritious, delicious for you and your families. All right, bye, bye.